You know, thinking about it, time in Gensokyo is really weird. I mean, to start with, there are two calendars who are in use at the same time. The first one being ours, or the Gregorian calendar, and the other one being the lunisolar calendar, used by the inhabitants of the Yokai Mountain, as seen in the articles of the Bunbunmaru newspaper. The difference between the two is that the latter has the foundation of the Great Hakure Barrier as its starting point, and since we are now at year 135, or season 135, it surely means that it was started in 1885. This is a simple difference, but not the only one, as months are also affected here. In fact, this calendar uses the old Japanese names for months, like Nagatsuki for September, meaning long-lasting month. Though it's a bit complicated to follow those two calendars at the same time, there's an advantage to the second one. Indeed, checking most of the articles of Aya's newspaper shows that the years go by after the 1st of Uzuki, meaning that the new year is canonically celebrated in April in Gensokyo, right when the flowers bloom. So that's why flower viewings are so important. But while it makes a bit of a difference, it doesn't really change the way time is seen in general, which is why I think it's important that we look at hours and minutes instead. To understand how the flow of time passes over there, we are going to need some official sources. And the first thing I am going to do is exclude imperishable nights, since time is seen as a mechanic here and not a concept, so it's shown in a way that we can easily understand. But now that this is taken care of, let's start by taking a look at immaterial and missing power. In this game, time is shown at the start of every round of the story mode, but there are some peculiar instances where this doesn't quite make sense. And the best scenario to notice that is Remelia's, since it mostly happens at night. So let's summarize it quickly. Remelia starts hunting for clues at 23 1/4. She then gets to Marissa's house at 25, then to Reimu's shrine at 26 1/2, meets Yomo in the graveyard at 27 1/2, and ends her night at 28 1/4. I'm pretty sure that you've noticed that something's wrong here. In fact, it's so obvious that it cannot be missed, but in case you don't get it, a day is normally 24 hours, not more than 28 as it's trying to show us here, so what is exactly going on in this game for it to show us such a time? Well, simply put, time in-game is never reset as long as it's shown within the same day. This can be easily proven by what Remelia says while at the Akure Shrine, where she is surprised that Reimu is still awake at 2 in the morning. This could be a simple mistake on the behalf of Twilight Frontier, but that's not really what interests us here. If we get back to Remelia's dialogue, we can see that she uses the term Ushimitsudoki to say 2 AM. But what does that exactly mean? Well, there are two meanings to that. Either meaning the dead of night or the 3rd quarter of the hour of the ox. The latter doesn't seem to make much sense, but that's actually going to help us a lot, as it shows that people in Gensokyo actually use an old 12-hour system that was in place for a long time in Japan, starting with the Heian era. Long story short, before the 24-hour system was implemented and used everywhere in the world, Japan instead opted for a 12-hour system, with 1 hour being roughly equal to 2 modern ones and having an animal of the Chinese zodiac attributed to them. I won't describe them in detail, but in order, the clock goes like so. First we start with the hour of the rat, then the hour of the ox, followed by the hour of the tiger, which then leads to the hour of the rabbit. Right after that comes the hour of the dragon, followed by the hour of the snake, then the hour of the horse, the hour of the goat, the one of the monkey, then the hour of the rooster, the hour of the dog, and finally the hour of the pig. It's not an optimal way to see time, if I can put it like that, but let's keep going with this. So now that we know all of this, let's get back to Remelia's statement saying that it is the 3rd quarter of the hour of the ox. If we look at the clock, this corresponds to in between 2 and 2 1/2 AM. And if we compare this with the clock that never resets in game, it matches pretty nicely. So how about we try to see if it works with another example? And how fortunate for us, because there's just that in another official source, which is chapter 37 of Waldmanhorn Hermit. In this chapter, Reimu and Marissa are together outside of the Akure Shrine, trying to clean up some falling snow before it piles up. While doing this, Marissa asks Reimu the time, who replies by saying that she thinks it is the 7th hour, while the manga kindly tells us that this roughly corresponds to 4 PM. To make sure that this wasn't a translation mistake, I went ahead and checked the original scans of the manga to see the original text, which reads Oyoso gogo yonji, or roughly 4 PM. so it's definitely not a mistake on the translator's part. So let's check that ourselves. Let's count 7 hours starting from midnight, and that makes us land on the hour of the horse, which doesn't correspond to 4 PM at all. But that's normal, because this clock wasn't meant to be used with midnight as a starting point. Instead, the clock started at the first hour of daybreak, which is the hour of the rabbits. So let's follow the same pattern, which makes us land on the hour of the rooster this time, corresponding to in between 5 and 7 PM, which is closer, but not really the 4 PM that we're looking for. So unfortunately, because of that, I'm going to have to speculate a bit, but that's the only thing we can do, so let's get the most out of what we have. Looking at the scene with Reimu and Marissa, we can see that they are in complete darkness. In fact, Reimu says it's getting so dark that she needs to get a lamp in order to keep shoveling. So it means that even though there's a snowstorm, it's already dark enough to not see anything. In another official book entitled Keiji Lunatic Renegade, Gensokyo is shown to be near the Yatsugatake Mountains, who are themselves located in the prefecture of Nagano. Taking a quick look at the sundial of the prefecture of Nagano shows us that lights are needed between 17 and 1740 in winter. However, since chapter 37 was released in December, it means that lights would have been necessary in between 17 and 17 and a half, which coincides with what Reimu's saying. Though it would mean that there's a small mistake in the writing of the manga, but I seriously doubt it. But truly, that still doesn't answer the biggest question out of them all, which is, why would they still use this system in the first place? Because after 1867, which is 18 years before the supposed foundation of the Great Hakari Barrier, the start of the day was changed to midnight as we now know it. Whatever the reason may be, diving into this matter is still extremely complicated, and wrapping one's head around it is never really something easy to do, but in a world where creatures like Kappa, Tengu and others exist, time is really the last thing the inhabitants of Gensokyo have to worry about. Well, for most of them anyway. I'll let you tell me what you think about all of this, but for the time being, I think that will be all for me. So at whatever time you might be watching this video, I'll wish you the best, and a good day or night.